Senator Susan Collins and other members of the Maine congressional delegation are vowing to fight cuts in National Institutes of Health grants to Maine research centers.
The cuts announced earlier this month under the Trump administration are on hold as they move through the courts. Researchers say if allowed to go through, the cuts will have a devastating impact on potential treatments for well-known diseases and Maine's growing life sciences industry. News Center Maine's Vivian Lee has the latest in this report.
At the University of New England's Portland campus, scientists and student researchers are working on finding treatments for common diseases such as arthritis, diabetes, chronic pain, and breakthroughs to finding cancer early.
We're involved in development of novel therapeutics like a new test for detection of breast cancer.
Karen Houseknecht is the vice president for research and scholarship at UNE. The university receives $17 million annually in grants from the National Institutes of Health. Under a recent directive from the Trump administration, 42%, or about $7 million of those grants and indirect costs, will be slashed. Those funds are spent on support staff, building maintenance, equipment, and cybersecurity. There are also concerns about future research projects already in the pipeline.
The NIH and the National Science Foundation, for example, have slowed or halted the review of grants that have been submitted. So all of these things impact what happens next.
The proposed cuts could have a ripple effect on research centers and labs across Maine, including the MDI Biolab in Bar Harbor.
And we can't do research without those things. We can't do research in the dark, and we can't do our kind of research outside of a building.
Elizabeth Marnick is the science outreach director at the lab where staff research regenerative science to develop treatments targeting diseases, including ALS and Alzheimer's. She says limiting overhead expenses to just 15% would reduce NIH-funded reimbursements by about $1.9 million a year. If the funding is slashed, Marnick believes it would negatively impact Maine's life sciences sector, which employs nearly 10,000 people.
We already are facing a workforce shortage in Maine, and that is particularly true also in life science. So this grant is really important for making sure we can train new scientists and also retain them.
Nearly 24 states, including Maine, have sued the Trump administration over the funding cuts, but the lawsuit remains tied up in federal court. Meanwhile, labs and research centers are preparing contingency plans and making risk assessments in case the funding is not restored. Vivian Lee, News Center, Maine.